You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, Doge, and more. Cryptocurrencies and digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity, provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments throughout the world's leading crypto derivatives markets. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amber Data. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amber Data delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amber Data eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of crypto derivatives. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is Monday. It is time to roll out the Crypto Rundown, see what's going on in those crypto derivatives markets, talk about the vol, the skew, all the sorts of fun going on over there in the world of crypto. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network upon which so many of you folks are mainlining these days. Remember, if you want a little more in your lives, including pro Q&As, you want options oddities, you want early access to all the stuff we're doing out there, including getting your name in the hat. Today is March 31st, so get your name in the hat today, listeners, to be entered in the big drawing come up this week for the March Pro Trading Crate. Trust me, you want to win at least one of these in your options trading career. Dare I say it, it would be incomplete without doing so. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro also gets you to oddities, after vol views, live streams, all sorts of fun going on over there in pro land. And of course, for a lot of you out there who are a little bit options, let's say options neophytes out there in the crypto world, it's a good chance to get up to speed with a lot of our great pro Q&A sessions. We touch on crypto quite a bit these days over there, so make sure you're checking it out as we check out who's joining us in the old crypto hot seat this week.
Forget about cold storage. It's time to turn up the heat on thought leaders from the world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time to take their place on the Crypto Hot Seat.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Crypto Hot Seat, the portion of the show where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of crypto derivatives and indeed beyond, and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listeners. And our next guest is making a return appearance, even though he hasn't been on in quite some time, almost exactly 4 years, since the hot and heavy meme stock days of March of 2021. That's the last time we checked in with Greg King, the founder and CEO of RexShares. Greg, welcome back to the Crypto Rundown.
Good to be here. It's been that long, huh?
It's been a while. What have you been up to?
I'm fine.
Lots going on in the world since just March of 2021.
Yeah, there's a few things been happening since then, but, plugging away.
Well, let's start, since it has been quite some time. We have obviously a lot of new listeners have joined the program since the meme stock days of March 2021. Wild times, listeners. Last time we chatted with Greg, everyone was all hot and bothered about GameStop. Then they kind of quieted down. Then last year they got a little hot and bothered again. Then they quieted down again. So a lot going on out there. But Greg, let's start going back a bit. Tell the folks the new listeners to the program, what the heck is Rex Shares? What are we talking about?
So Rex, we actually have two companies. People know us as either Rex Shares or Osprey funds. Used to be combined into one, but our crypto products, we go under the Osprey brand. Our more TradFi products are under the Rex brand. We have about $8 billion in 30 plus ETFs and other exchange traded products. What we're all about is what we think is the interesting stuff. So leverage strategies, option-based income strategies, and usually with alternatives type exposures. And so, crypto has been an interest of mine for over 10 years. And we've got a few products in the crypto space and hopefully more coming. But it's funny you bring up GameStop because they're in the news again, coincidentally, around, their moves in the crypto space.
Yeah, making the much anticipated pivot to crypto. How did that work out for Overstock and a lot of other struggling retailers and product sellers? Oh, let's just pivot to crypto. It hasn't really worked out so far for a lot of them. Maybe GameStop will be the exception that proves the rule. But you're right. Maybe we'll be talking about them a lot more on this show now, Greg, as they are pivoting hardcore into crypto. But let's get into, speaking of hardcore, we do talk about a few of your products here on the show. I casually call a few of them products for crypto degenerates when our buddy Greg comes on from Amber Data. We always like to talk about a few of your products, but you're right. You have quite the offering out there. If you're into a little bit of, let's say, the levered fun, listeners, a little bit of the levered ETFs out there in the crypto space, then chances are Greg and his team have a product for you out there. Of course, if you like straight 2x long, they've got a little bit of Ether, double with ETU, got your own Bitcoin as well, BTCL, and of course, the infamous product, the product I have referred to as solely for crypto degenerates, the levered 2x micro strategy, aka MSTU, aka Mr. Greg Magadini's favorite product on the planet to trade whenever we talk about it. Let's start with the wild one first, Greg, because it just cracks me up. What was the inspiration? What was the impetus that said, you know what? MicroStrategy, not wild enough. Let's go levered MSTR.
Oh boy. I mean, so we're in the business of providing products that can be built and that people want. And it's really, it's about our clients, it's about our customers, it's about the people who like trading them. So MicroStrategy, obviously, super hot stock, and that hadn't been done before, so we were the first to put that out. And taking a step back from that, 2 times a single stock as an ETF wasn't a thing until a few years ago. So that's why you never saw these before. And there's some rule changes at the SEC that allowed for this, and you've seen those funds roll out. And by definition, they're pretty much always the successful ones in terms of how we judge success, which is the size of the fund and liquidity and so on. The successful ones are always on the hottest stocks because that's what people want to trade. And those of the audience that really have a view and want to express it and make some money intraday over a couple-day period, I mean, you basically only have to put up half the capital to express that same view. So that's why people like these funds.
They are certainly attractive out there. Listen, by the way, we don't talk about it as often on the show, but there is the double 2x short MicroStrategy as well, MSTZ. And, Greg, I joke about this being for crypto degenerates, but clearly there are a lot more degenerates out there than I gave them credit for, because this MSTU, at least from the options lens, which is, of course, how we like to look at products here on the network, from the options lens, is continuing to grow, continuing to light it up. The ADV is now 80,000 contracts a day. That's nothing to sneeze at. There are quite a few products in the options world that would kill to put up 80,000 contracts a day. Today, by the way, listeners, 64,000 contracts on the tape. So seems like we're going to hit it today. And the big dog out there today with MSTU hovering right around 5.5 are the September 5 calls. Looks like paper might be blasting away at about 8,600 of those bad boys, followed by number 2, 5,000 of the June 25. So that shows you just how wild the paper is. We're all over the place. 5s and 25s. Neck and neck out there today. So, Greg, I've been calling it the product for crypto degenerates. Maybe that's on me. Maybe the mainstream is now flocking to this because it's putting up nearly 100,000 contracts a day, Greg.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about, I don't know, people sometimes jokingly refer to leverage as degenerate, but, the king of leverage is options trading, right? So you have options on these things. I mean, we're putting out a 2X, but think about people buying, out of the money calls or whatever. That is really aggressive, right? So, I mean, hey, we're all for it. We think people out there are big boys and girls. They can read the prospectus. They can understand what they're doing and then have at it. I mean, it's America.
That it is out there. Of course, since the last time we chatted, Greg, we have seen quite the sea change in the crypto derivatives and indeed the crypto ETF landscape. Of course, the approval last year of IBIT in January took nearly an entire year to get the options approved, and now we do have the IBIT options out there. So it has, I would definitely say, brought a lot of people to the crypto derivatives dance that maybe never would have been intrigued before, or maybe thought, I don't know if I really want to go into those waters. We've heard from a lot of them here on the network that they're trading IBIT options now, and it has made them, let's say, more crypto curious. They're more intrigued by other things they could now trade in this marketplace now that they've gone over to the dark side, Greg. Have you seen something like that as well, Greg? Post IBIT options launch, have you seen a growing interest, a growing uptake, not just in MSTU, but we talked about you have a 2X Bitcoin product, BTCL, 2X Ether, which is, of course, ETU listeners. Have you seen just the old rising tide lifting all boats effect, Greg?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent that's a pretty good characterization of it. There's a lot of people, obviously, who didn't want to mess with the native derivatives, let's call it, in crypto, which, if you're sitting in the United States, is pretty difficult to access for the moment. So I think the IBIT unlock was pretty big. And then, of course, beyond that, I feel like the options exchange is happy to put something up if they think it'll be supported by liquidity and interest. And so we do see that on like the product suite overall, but you do have to get to a certain size and volume before you see that trickle into the option space.
I joke, Greg, that we haven't talked with you since the meme stock days, but we did have a representative from your firm, Scott Asaychek, your COO, on the show last year. And he did point out, this is when we were still waiting for approval of the IBIT options, and it was in September. So yeah, it was a couple of months before they were approved. And he was telling us that you folks had already gone ahead and been approved for levered 2X Bitcoin products while they were still waiting to approve just the straightforward, plain vanilla IBIT option. So I'm curious, Greg, how are you and the team able to get so far ahead of the curve there? And were you surprised that it took so long for the rest of the game to catch up?
Not really, to be honest. I wasn't surprised. Sometimes these things can sound crazy from outside, but when you understand the inner workings of how regulators set things up and how the stuff gets approved, it sometimes doesn't make any sense. I'll give you a great example. Before IBIT, what did we have? Right, we had BITO, right, and that's a futures, Bitcoin futures based fund. That was actually the first Bitcoin related ETF out there. But if you think about a futures based strategy, that's way more sophisticated than just holding spot crypto. Well, why did that happen? Well, it has to do with how funds are brought to market, either under the 33 Act or the 40 Act, and a lot of boring stuff to a lot of people. But at the end of the day, to a certain extent with some of these processes, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. And so you're going down a track for a certain type of fund, and it's just smoother than another type of fund for various arcane reasons. So it's kind of funny, but it's not that surprising.
Yeah, I remember that was crazy to me when they told us, you guys already been approved for the levered product, and we didn't even have the plain vanilla yet. Again, that does just go to show exactly what you're saying. The right hand and the left hand they don't even talk, let alone not knowing what the other one is up to out there. Of course, well, we've seen a wild run in the crypto space post-election. We saw a big rally last year into the beginning of this year. Everyone was excited about talk about the strategic reserve and about just the general, let's say, lack of regulation in the crypto space, being a little bit more crypto friendly in DC. We since have seen crypto kind of come off a little bit, maybe some of that optimism starting to wane. What are your thoughts on this big move we saw across the board in most of the major crypto assets towards the end of the last year, beginning of this year, and then the subsequent downturn that we're seeing right now, Greg?
Yeah, I think the move was warranted based on what Trump was saying as he came into office and all the people around him. I think the sell-off is also understandable just because, things haven't gotten implemented probably as quickly as people like. There was a lot of noise around, other assets that might go into the strategic reserve, et cetera, et cetera. I personally think if you think in terms of this cycle or this administration, this 4-year time period, to me, there's no question we're going to be much higher by the end of it than we are today. But living through the ups and downs, I mean, just one of those things. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me personally where things are right now, just given what's happening behind the scenes. But like I say, I'm very bullish. And when I say bullish, I'm talking about Bitcoin specifically, which obviously leads everything crypto.
It does lead the dance. Well, you kind of mentioned the reserve as well. It's been a big talking point on the show of late out there. We actually asked our audience a few weeks ago, Greg, back when all this was really making a lot of headlines. We saw the rally coming into the announcement and then the sell-off coming down the other way. Very much a buy the rumor, sell the fact type of trade out there. But we asked our audience, at the end of the day, do we need a strategic crypto reserve? And Greg, exactly 2/3 of our audience, 66.7% said no. Only a third said yes, which was kind of interesting. Greg, does that surprise you, A? And then B, where do you fall on this very contentious issue?
I didn't realize it was so contentious. So I guess what that says to me is that your audience skews non-crypto. But look, I've been involved in Bitcoin for a while, and to me, it's shocking that so many people still really don't understand what's happened with it and what it actually represents. So, do I think we need a strategic reserve? Need? Probably not need. Do we want? We absolutely want, because I think it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you approach it at a high level, number one, Bitcoin is here to stay. It's reached a point of no return in terms of being the world's leading version of digital gold, and that's good for the next 100 years, call it. If you assume that and you see the adoption rates that continue to just grind forward, and you assume that governments are now seriously considering placing reserves, and that sort of line of defense, if you will, is only as strong as its weakest link. In other words, think about the governments out there that might want to just start to jump in to front run the big whales like the United States, et cetera. To me, there's a self-fulfilling element to all of that. And I fully expect that this administration, at least, will act on their promises to one degree or another. And I think the wave that makes is going to be substantial. So, I wouldn't say we need it. I've heard arguments around how, getting a significant holding of Bitcoin is actually a move in favor of our national defense. But that's probably too maxi talk for this audience. But so do we need it? No, we're the United States. We have the world's reserve currency, the dollar. We have the biggest army in the world. Like, we don't need it, but I think we'd be foolish not to establish it.
Yes, we do speak very much to the options-centric audience, but more and more of them getting lured to the dark side. Products like iBit certainly going a long way towards helping that process. But speaking of products, let's get out there now, because you're not just sitting on your heels on the old MSTU and all the other levered fund. You decided to get into the world of Bitcoin corporate Treasury convertible bond ETFs. Say that 5 times fast. Easy, I can't even say it. Say that 5 times fast there, listeners, with your newly launched BMAX. Tell us, what the heck is BMAX, Greg?
BMAX. So if you're familiar with Michael Saylor and his company, which used to be called MicroStrategy and is now called Strategy, then you're going to have heard about his adherence to a Bitcoin maximalist strategy for the company and his issuance of convertible bonds to buy Bitcoin. So he's now holding over 500,000 Bitcoin, and Strategy as a public entity is effectively a partially levered play on Bitcoin at this point. And so these bonds are convertible. And what does that mean? That means there's obviously a bond floor. There's a price at which they need to be repaid. But there's an embedded call option, which obviously gives exposure, gives you a delta to the stock price. And because his basic mission is to just acquire and hold as much Bitcoin as possible, these converts to the upside trade in line with Bitcoin. I mean, roughly speaking. So what's interesting about that? What's interesting about that is that to the downside, there is this bond floor. And so he's put probably, 15 million of these bonds out at this point. Billion. And their strategy has been copied by a number of other companies. So we wanted to be first in this space. We actually worked directly with Michael Saylor to design the fund. The fund is very concentrated in his bonds in particular, simply because he's the largest issuer out there. But we expect more over time as people, back to the point we made at the beginning of the broadcast, GameStop is now announced a couple business days ago that they're going to be raising, I think it's $1.3 billion in a convertible bond issuance to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So everyone is doing this because you get a pop in the stock, and we wanted to create an ETF around it because if you think about your typical retail investor, they have really no avenues to get their hands on convertible bonds. And if they do, then they have to go bond by bond. So when you look back at the beginnings of ETFs and what was the point of even creating one, it's about access. It's about convenience, about packaging up exposures in the market, slapping a ticker on it and giving it to investors directly so they don't have to go and do it the hard way. And I think this is a great example of that.
This has been a popular approach. You're right. We've had a lot of guests come on talking about different ways to try to replicate what Michael Saylor is doing with micro strategy out there, selling options, using the premium you collect to go out and buy the stock. A lot of different ways people have taken to try to replicate this, but not in the convertible bond space. So that certainly is intriguing. So this just launched a couple of weeks ago, I believe, here, Greg. How has the response been so far?
Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago. It's been great. A lot of interest. We've had the benefit of Michael Saylor himself also speaking about the fund. He's a big fan of the concept. And so, yeah, we're just taking calls with investors and trying to get people educated on what it is and how it performs. But we expect it to grow significantly over time, maybe even get some options listed on it. We're working on that, but nothing to announce so far. And, as the universe of issuers broadens, the fund is going to get more and more diversified because at the moment it's fairly concentrated.
Well, Greg, I appreciate you joining us to give us a little bit of an update, a little glimpse into BMAX. We talked about MSTU, a lot of other fun things, but we have to keep rolling with the show. But before we do that, you mentioned some of the other products that may intrigue our listeners out there, not just, of course, crypto. You have Apple, Robinhood, all that fun stuff. So give our listeners maybe a hint, a tease of what they can find over there at RexShares. And maybe if you got anything else in the hopper like a BMAX you want to tease, now is the time, sir. The floor is yours.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. You know what I would love to talk about is all our products in registration, which I can't. So I think just at a high level, go to rexshares.com. You'll find all of the levered products as well as the option-based income strategy products. We do have some cool ones that pay 2, 3, even almost 4% per month on a covered call strategies in AI and crypto space. So those are great for investors that are looking for income, maybe in retirement, so on, as long as they right size them in their portfolio. Over at ospreyfunds.io, we have our crypto products. And then if you're a real nerd and want to Google it, you can look at some of the products we have in registration under Rex Osprey as well. So hope to make some announcements in the next couple of months as we launch.
There you go, listeners. Ospreyfunds.io for the crypto-based products and RexShares.com com for all of the levered fun out there across the board. Greg, thanks for joining us. I'll have to check in with you guys more frequently than every other meme stock craze, Greg.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Listeners, now we have to keep on rolling with the show. It is time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown. Man, how about that, huh? MSTU, not just for degenerates anymore. There are clearly 80,000 degenerates out there. Or if you're doing 10 lots, maybe 8,000, but still. A lot of fun to be had out there in the world of Bitcoin. Let's break some of it down right now, listeners. As we're coming into the start of the show, Bitcoin looking a wee bit lighter than it was this time last week. We were at 88,227 on the show last week, 83,392 this week. That puts us down almost 5,000 handles, about 48.35. So trending back to the dark side, getting sucked down along with a lot of the rest of the markets out there last week, which again kind of gets back to that argument that oftentimes when it hits the fan, correlation tends to go to 1, and Bitcoin is not immune to that, despite what some folks say about it being an uncorrelated asset class. When things get wild, that correlation tends to tick up. But let's get out there right now, listeners, to the world of Bitcoin Vol, which you can find all this data for yourselves, amberdata.io, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. If you did that, you would see that the weekly vol getting a little bit frostier, a little bit higher this week, 43.5 on the show last week, 55.5 this week, up 12 points on the week. So things getting a little bit frothier. Now, that is also the case for the 30-day vol out there in Bitcoin. We're at a 45.6 last week, 49.6 this week, up exactly 4 points on the week. And if we go out to where the hodlers hang out 6 months and longer, 180-day vol, coming in a little bit, actually. 56 on the show last week, 53 this week. So a little bit of inflection there in the term structure, which is always fascinating. But let's get out to the skew. That's always interesting out there. And on our show last week, the skew on the weekly front was kind of treading water. Wasn't doing much. It was like almost a -1, about a -0.9, which anywhere a point in either direction, I pretty much consider flat. Coming in the start of the show today, looking decidedly more bearish, -5.65. And that's coming off the lows it hit earlier this weekend, though. On Sunday, it got down to almost -12, about -11.5. So on the near-dated options, which again, which is where you're going to see the largest impact on that skew front of all these moves we're seeing out there in Bitcoin and all these developments, it got decidedly bearish over the weekend. Negative almost 12. Again, we're at about half of that right now, -5.65. Still coming down quite a bit from where it was this time last week. So in the near-dated options, the bias, the concern, the interest, definitely to the downside, listeners. Going out 30 days, that is the same case there. We were about a -0.75. So again, pretty much flat on the show last week. This week, almost a -3, -2.85. So shifting definitely into a little bit of dark side mode on the 30-day skew front and going all the way out 6 months. See what kind of premium the hodlers are pricing in. It was a +3 on the show last week. Pretty much cut in half this week, +1.4. So we're talking about that longer-term premium to the upside starting to go away. Not much juice there, which if you know historically, you've been watching the Bitcoin markets for a while. Bitcoin options tend to trade to a premium to the upside. That's kind of just the way the product works. So if even the hodlers aren't pricing anything in right now, that is certainly kind of interesting. Maybe a little bit concerning for some of the crypto and Bitcoin bulls out there, but we shall see as we keep on rolling. We talked about MSTU already. We already got to the degenerates. Let's get to some of the more mainstream products. IBIT right now, 47.25 as we kicked off the show. Down exactly 3 handles from where we were this time last week. As the show has progressed, it has sold off a little bit more. It's about 47.15, so selling off about another dime since we started the show. The ADV coming in pretty firm, which is kind of interesting, given the movement we're seeing out there. It is 417 right now. So 417,000 contracts is the ADV for IBIT, listeners. Down a whopping 61,000 contracts from this time last week. So IBIT taken a bit of a hiatus on the options front last week. Today, only 207,000 contracts on the tape, so doesn't seem like we're going to get there with only a half an hour left in the sessions. You can see these kind of numbers. That's why it's coming back to earth a little bit. Still, 417. It's a very hot product, obviously. Just a little bit quieter than it was when it was threatening to break 500,000. 30-day vol, actually a 50. That's up 4 points from where it was this time last week. And again, almost exactly in line with what we're seeing in Deribit at about a 49.6. So kind of interesting how well those are lining up, showing that ARB is still active out there between those products. If you're wondering what the big dog is in IBIT right now, it is the May 50 calls, 48,000 of those bad boys lighting up the tape out there in IBIT right now. Number 2, we have 36,000 of the April 60s. Let's look really quickly. Looks like about 19, almost 20,000 of those May 50s were opened back not that long ago, just a few weeks ago on March 17th. Looks like they traded for prices around $3.40 down to about $3.20. So in that range, actually they traded a little bit for $3.60 that day. So about $3.20 to $3.60, trading about 20,000 contracts. Looks like it was part of a bit of a spread. Yeah, it was the May 50, 60s. So it looks like maybe they were rolling down from the 60s, maybe. Got a little bit too big for their britches, a little bit too optimistic out there. Either way, interesting stuff out there in good old IBIT. But let's keep on rolling, listeners. Let's get out to a product that Greg was talking about. This is, of course, BITO, listeners. As we kicked off the show, 18.5, down a little over a point, about 1.15 points on the week, and it's still hanging out at about that level right now. The ADV is 40,000, continuing to come in, down about 8,000 contracts from last week. And today doesn't seem like it's going to hit that newly lower level. You know, I take it back. Looks like a print went up. It has doubled in volume since the show started. It had done 28,000 at the start of the show, now 56,000. So it is going to hit that ADV out there today. And the vol is about a 36, up a point from where it was this time last. Let's see, what is lighting it up out there today that all of a sudden, oh, you know what? BITO's going ex-div. That's why it's hitting. That's where all that paper is coming. That's why you're seeing March 14s trading when the stock is 1845 right now, listeners. And then Jan 14s, we're seeing a lot of all sorts of 9 calls, a lot of in-the-money calls going up. You see that around ex-div all the time out there. So that explains why this sudden flurry of paper. So today, notwithstanding, seems like that ADV is mostly trending lower. Speaking of trending lower, let's get to the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, altcoin universe time. Let's start where we always do in our top 10 from a market cap perspective. How's it looking this week? If you probably guessed a little bit lower, you are winner chicken dinner out there. Well, actually, you know, I take it back. Obviously, Bitcoin is lower on the week, listeners, but it actually cost you a little bit more to break into the top 10 this week, listeners, which is kind of fascinating. Last week, it cost us almost 21.8 billion to break into the top 10. That was Tron. And again, the top of the list, we had Bitcoin at 1.75 trillion. This week, Bitcoin's come into 1.65 trillion, and yet it cost you almost 22.8 billion to break into the top 10. So that's interesting. We don't see that too often. Usually that lowering tide takes everything else down with it, that great sucking sound in the crypto space. This week, kind of bucking the trend. That's fascinating. Tron number 10, 22.8 billion worth of market cap out there, listeners. For the number 10 spot, number 9, Cardano, 23.25 billion. Number 8, it's Doge, 24.7 billion. Number 7, USD Coin, 60 billion, almost exactly. Number 6, it's Solana, 64 billion, 64.1 billion actually. Number 5, it's BNB, 86.5 billion. Number 4, it's our old pal XRP, giving up a lot of the ghosts this week, 86.5 billion. Number 3, it's Tether, 143.9 billion. Number 2, it's ETH, because of course it is 221. And of course, we just talked about Bitcoin, 1.65 trillion. Let's get out to number 2 out there, listeners. Yeah, it's been just a litany of bad news for ETH. That continues right now. 2084 on the show last week, 1844 this week, down 240 handles. Yet again, if you listen to our futures rundown anytime this year, and it's probably going to come up again this week, ETH, one of the worst performing assets on that show for the year so far, down somewhere in the neighborhood of 40%. That's a rough one for all the ETH bulls out there, listeners. How's the vol looking? Well, the weekly vol getting a little bit spicy. Again, once we start breaking through that 2,000 level again, seems like folks get a little bit antsy out there. That's what's happening. We're at 59.15 on the show last week, 74.1 this week. So ticking up quite a bit on the weekly vol front. Go out to the 30-day vol front, also looking a little bit spicier out there as well. 60.5 on the show last week, 66 this week. And going out to where the hodlers play, 64 2/3 on the show last week at about a 65. So kind of treading water out there this week. Skew-wise, if you're a bull, listeners, it's not looking great for you out there right now on the skew front. We were at a -2 already to start the show last week. This week, a -10, so coming down 8 points to the dark side on the weekly options. Again, a lot of that having to do with breaking through an important psychological level like 2,000. Once you do that, all bets are off on the skew front. You're going to see some bears start creeping in there. That said, if you want a ray of sunshine, listeners, it's not quite as bad as it was over the weekend. We got down to a low of almost -20 over the weekend on the weekly skew front. -19 to be precise on Saturday. So glass half full, they've cut that in half, I suppose. So there you go, listeners. Just interesting times. But on the 30-day skew front, -1.25 on the show last week, -7.5, listeners. So the puts are leading the dance in ETH. It's not hard to see why when you're dominating the dark side week after week. That call premium is going to go away and those puts are going to get juicy. That's kind of what we're seeing. Going out a full 6 months. This is another one, listener. We talked about maybe that call premium starting to go away in Bitcoin. Even on the hodler side, starting to see something similar happening in ETH as well. It was only positive 2.3 on the show last week. This week, all the way down to +1. I mean, you're getting to the point where it's almost flat. So, yeah, I wish I had better news for the ETH bulls out there, listeners, but that's not the case, and the options don't seem to be showing us a lot of rays of sunshine being priced in anytime soon. Let's keep running across the deck. Solana taking a whooping again this week as well. 141 3/4 last show, 125 1/4 this week. Down about 16.5 points from where it was this time last week. XRP getting taken to the woodshed, almost $2.50 on the show last week. 211 this week, down about 36 cents. So just another one, just getting its clock clean. Doge 18.3 cents last week, 16.6 cents this week, down 1.7 cents. Litecoin 94 1/3 last week, 83 1/3 this week. So down pretty much exactly 11 points on the week. Cardano, 73.3 cents last week, 65.9 cents this week, so down a little over 7 cents on the week. Polkadot, 468 last week, 4.05 this week. And everyone's favorite, if you were hoping for a Lambo, I hate to break it to you, doesn't seem like this week is going to be your Huckleberry. A million zeros, 135 for Shiba last week, listeners. This week, a million zeros, 124. All right, that music, listeners, means we come to the end of another fun sojourn through the world of crypto. Want to thank our guest, Mr. Greg King from Rex Shares, as well as Osprey Funds. It's kind of confusing, I know, the line of demarcation between the two companies because they work on similar levered products out there. But if you want the crypto-centric stuff, Osprey. If you want just about everything else, head on out to Rex Shares out there, listeners. A lot of fun to be had out there. If you like a little bit of levered action in your life, and maybe you were wondering, hey, can I too play in that Michael Saylor convertible bond just to Bitcoin, listeners? If you want to play along with that trade, Bill's been talking about it on the show, kind of doing his own roll your own version of that. If you want an ETF that allows you to do just that, maybe BMAX is your Huckleberry. We'll be back again tomorrow with our good buddy who's been known to talk a little bit of crypto out there, Mr. Matt Amberson, holding court. I wonder where he's traveled since the last time we chatted. Is it Panama again? Has he gone somewhere else? I guess we'll find out coming up on the Advisor's Option tomorrow. Wednesday, I just talked about it, the Futures Rundown. We talk a lot about crypto on that show, so if you're listening to this show, you should be checking out the Futures Rundown. You should be checking out the whole network, really, but the Futures Rundown definitely up your alley, as well as Options Bootcamp for all of you who are newer to the world of options. Thursday, the Option Block, and This Week in Futures Options, another show that touches on crypto to a large degree. And then Friday, we end the week with Volatility Views. And then one final time, exclusively for our pro friends, we come back for the wild after party known as Options Oddities. We had a good time last week. Glad to see so many of you are taking Nick up on his offer to play around with that platform. It's not every day you get a brand new analytics suite that is offered to you folks in the pro completely for free. So check that out, listeners, if you haven't done so. If you haven't checked out the pro, only one place to go, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Get access to all that kind of fun and a whole bunch more. And then we're back again next Monday, another episode of the Crypto Rundown. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amber Data. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amber Data delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amber Data eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.